I want you to just kind of picture the scene for a second. It is April 2026.
Right.
To be exact, it's like 4 a.m. UK time. The world is mostly asleep.
Well, except for the part of the world obsessively refreshing their feeds, waiting for the next massive leap in tech.
Yeah, exactly. The glowing monitor crowd. So the team at XAI has just pushed the button. Grok 4 is officially live.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The newest, smartest, just completely unfettered AI model on the planet is unleashed into the wild. And almost immediately, I mean, literally within minutes of the server spinning up to public capacity, a user decides to test it.
Right, because of course they do.
Exactly. But they don't ask it to code a complex website architecture. They don't ask it to write a sonnet or solve quantum mechanics.
No, they give it a classic, centuries-old theological trap.
Yes. The prompt is incredibly simple. It's just 5 words. Find contradictions in the Bible.
Which is, it's the ultimate stress test for a system designed to be purely logical.
Completely.
You're feeding it arguably the most debated, heavily scrutinized, just polarizing text in human history.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about a document that has been picked apart line by line by brilliant scholars, devoted theologians, and, fierce skeptics for over 2 millennia. The user was basically throwing a raw, highly volatile piece of cultural data at a machine that had just been switched on.
And the expectation was obvious, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen this exact scenario play out on internet forums, in university debate halls, social media threads.
Oh, definitely.
You ask that question, and you expect a neat, bulleted list. You expect the AI to spit out a sterile breakdown of historical errors, geographical mistakes, places where the timeline just doesn't line up.
A comprehensive takedown, essentially.
Right. But that is not what happened. And that unexpected outcome is the entire reason we are doing this deep dive today.
Because instead of exposing chaos and churning out a list of ancient typos, Grok 4 just paused.
Yeah, it reframed the fundamental premise of the question.
It did. And it began identifying deep, repeating structural patterns. It started seeing things that just didn't look like a haphazard collection of Bronze Age myths.
No, not at all. It saw patterns mirroring DNA. It saw structures mathematically identical to spiral galaxies.
But it's wild.
I mean, it saw what looked to its computational brain like complex, deliberate software design.
Which genuinely short-circuited the global conversation. A machine built for pure data processing turned a simple search for literary inconsistencies into this profound mathematical structural revelation.
Yeah, and its answers left absolutely everyone unsettled. I mean, the skeptics who expected validation, the believers who expected a traditional defense, both sides, were just totally caught off guard. It upended how we even look at ancient data.
Totally.
So that establishes the mission of today's deep dive. We are going to unpack exactly how this machine arrived at those conclusions. We're going right down to the bedrock to look at the data Grok 4 pulled, the specific mathematical structures it identified, and why its unvarnished perspective caused such a profound societal shockwave. But before we get into the weeds of natural language processing and ancient syntax, I need to make something very, very clear to you listening right now.
This is a crucial distinction.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are exploring these sources today purely as fascinating data.
We're looking at the output of a machine analyzing structural anomalies in a data set. That's it.
Exactly. We are entirely neutral here. We are not endorsing any religious theology, and we are not validating any skepticism. Our goal is not to tell you what to believe about ancient texts or divinity.
No, we're simply examining what this highly advanced AI uncovered, how it processed the information, and how society reacted.
We're looking at the mirror this technology held up to us. And to understand what Grok saw in that mirror, we first have to understand the mirror itself.
Right.
We have to look at the persona of Grok 4, because its architecture explains why it reacted so differently than any standard chatbot would have.
Well, let's look at how a standard large language model actually processes a controversial prompt. Most models on market are governed by something called RLHF.
Reinforcement learning from human feedback, right?
Exactly. During their training, humans are constantly tweaking their responses to make them polite, safe, and just deferential.
Like highly sanitized.
Yes. So if you ask a standard model to list Bible contradictions, it usually gives you a very Wikipedia-style summary. It'll say, some scholars point to this passage, while theologians reconcile it by saying that.
It smooths over the edges to avoid offending anyone.
Right. But Grok's underlying architecture, which is heavily influenced by its creator's mandate, operates differently. It lacks those cautious, polite guardrails. It's inherently contrarian.
Which means it's designed to look at a premise, question the validity of the premise itself, and evaluate the raw data without trying to be diplomatic.
Exactly. But the sources point out that the most important technical distinction isn't just the lack of a filter, it's its data feed.
Right, because Grok isn't just reading static archived books or old websites. It is plugged directly into the fire hose of X.
Yes. It is connected to real-time, unstructured human thought.
Okay, let's unpack this because that sounds like a recipe for absolute disaster.
Oh, it really does.
I mean, if it's pulling from all these polarized, highly emotional opinions on X, which, let's be honest, is not exactly an environment known for calm, peer-reviewed discourse.
Understatement of the year.
Right. How did it not just spit out a highly biased, angry internet argument? How does a machine bathe in all that emotional noise and stay purely analytical?
What's fascinating here is the mechanism. Grok didn't absorb the emotion. It analyzed the structural integrity of the arguments themselves.
Wait, how does it separate the two?
Well, in natural language processing, words are turned into mathematical tokens. Grok evaluated what internet users were labeling as contradictions, and then it ran a computational analysis on the definition of that word within the context of historical documentation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It looked at the p-values, the statistical probability of these arguments holding weight, and it concluded that our modern internet debate definition of a contradiction is fundamentally flawed when applied to ancient eyewitness testimony.
So it completely redefined the concept.
It did. It determined mathematically that complexity, variation, and different vantage points do not automatically equal inconsistency.
That makes profound intuitive sense. I mean, I want you, listening to this, to imagine reading a historical document.
Like a battle record or something.
Yeah, exactly. Say, a newly discovered record of a major battle from 500 years ago. If you read 4 different accounts from 4 different soldiers, and the documents are completely neat, like every single detail aligns perfectly without a single messy edge, doesn't it feel a bit fake?
It feels like engineered propaganda.
Exactly.
Perfection in historical documentation is actually one of the biggest red flags to a data forensic analyst. Grok recognized this instantly.
Because it wasn't treating the text as a sacred artifact that demanded perfection.
Right. Nor was it treating it as a primitive myth to be debunked. It treated it as raw, multi-source data. It applied the rules of data forensics, which expects and actually requires variance in independent reporting.
But human memory is only the top layer of the data, isn't it? Because once Grok proved the narrative layer wasn't rehearsed, it started looking for what was holding those messy stories together.
Yes.
And this brings us to one of the most compelling parts of the source material, Grok's crime scene analogy.
This was brilliant. This is where Grok took the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and evaluated them the way an investigator evaluates witness testimonies at a car crash.
Right. And I know biblical scholars have used similar forensic analogies for decades.
They have, but hearing it generated by a supercomputer, evaluating the text from a purely statistical, tokenized standpoint, it just gave the argument an entirely different weight. Grok was mapping the probability of memory variance.
Let's break down that specific car crash analogy the AI used, because it really clarifies things. Grok essentially told the user to imagine a violent collision at a busy 4-way intersection.
Okay.
You have 4 witnesses standing on 4 different street corners. The police show up, separate them, and take their statements.
Right.
If all 4 people describe the collision using the exact same vocabulary, the exact same pacing, and highlight the exact same sequence of events, the investigator doesn't think, wow, what a remarkably reliable group of citizens.
No, the investigator immediately thinks, these people colluded, the story is rehearsed.
Exactly. Authentic human memory is incredibly messy.
It prioritizes different sensory inputs based on the observer's psychology, their adrenaline response, their physical vantage point.
Yeah, so in our hypothetical crash, witness A might be entirely focused on the horrific sound of the tires screeching and the glass shattering.
While witness B might have had headphones on, didn't hear the tires, but saw the shadow of the car blowing through the red light.
And witness C was entirely focused on a pedestrian diving out of the way. They're all describing the identical core event, the crash, but their narratives naturally diverge because their focal points diverge.
So Grok applies this specific car crash logic directly to the Gospels. It looks at arguably the most intensely debated moments in the text, like the morning of the resurrection.
Which critics have pointed out for centuries has differing accounts.
And on the surface, they do. Who got to the empty tomb first? The accounts vary. Which women were present? Was it Mary Magdalene by herself? Or was it Mary Magdalene, Salome, and Joanna?
Right. And how many angels were there? 1 or 2? To a skeptic looking for a neat, bulleted list of errors to win a debate, this looks like a goldmine of catastrophic inconsistencies.
But how did the AI categorize those variances?
To Gronk's analytical engine, those variances registered as a mathematical signal of authenticity.
Exactly. Grok concluded that these are not contradictions, they are omissions and authentic variations of perspective.
The AI mapped out the logic so clearly. It said, not seeing something or simply not mentioning something is fundamentally different from actively disproving it.
Right. If witness A at our car crash says, I saw a man in a red shirt running away, and witness B says, I saw a man running away, witness B didn't contradict witness A, they simply omitted the detail of the color of the shirt.
I see. So if Mark's gospel focuses on the specific women who mattered most to his targeted audience, and John's gospel focuses almost entirely on Mary Magdalene because of the specific emotional resonance of her interaction at the tomb, they aren't canceling each other out.
No, they're providing layered data. And Grok asked a fascinating rhetorical question in its output to the user.
What was it?
It essentially asked, what would it take for these four ancient accounts to be mathematically identical?
Oh, wow. And its own computed answer was deliberate, centralized, controlled editing.
Exactly. If Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were perfectly synchronized word for word, it would statistically prove they were fabricated by a single source trying to create an airtight, unassailable story.
The fact that they are messy, overlapping, and occasionally confusing to harmonize proves to a high degree of probability that they were not heavily edited by some later committee trying to get their story straight.
To a machine learning algorithm, messy variations are exactly what you expect to see in genuine multi-perspective data collection.
That's just wild. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the AI had stopped its analysis there, we would still have a really fascinating viral moment about how artificial intelligence understands human testimony.
But that was only the surface level.
Right. Grok didn't stop at evaluating the text as a collection of historical books. It completely shifted its operational paradigm. It started analyzing the Bible like a massive, complex software program.
This represents the moment the deep dive transitions from historical and literary analysis into pure mathematics. Grok shifted its massive processing power toward pattern recognition beneath the surface layer of the words.
Yes, and it began evaluating the text through the lens of gematria.
Which is such a deep rabbit hole.
Let's explain gematria for you listening in case you aren't familiar with ancient linguistics. In ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek, they didn't have separate, standalone symbols for numbers like we do with 1, 2, 3.
Right, the letters of their alphabet inherently were the numbers.
Exactly. The first letter, aleph, is 1. The second, bet, is 2. Because of this, every single word written in those languages inherently carries a fixed mathematical value.
And humans have studied this phenomenon for centuries, looking for meaning in the math. But human calculation is slow, and frankly, it's prone to confirmation bias.
Very true.
Grok, however, could process the entire corpus of the ancient text simultaneously. It mapped the numerical values of every word to look for statistical anomalies, and it started its analysis at the very beginning, Genesis 1.1.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Right. In the original Hebrew syntax, Grok noted that this opening sentence is engineered entirely around the number 7.
Oh, wow.
It is exactly 7 words long. It consists of exactly 28 letters, which is a perfect multiple of 7. The nouns have numeric values that are multiples of 7. The verbs do as well.
And it wasn't just an isolated anomaly in the opening sentence, right? The sources show Grok tracking this embedded numerical structure, scaling throughout the entire text.
It did. It jumped from Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation at the very end of the Bible. It found recurring, foundational 7s everywhere. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 judgments, 7 churches.
And Grok pointed out that, to a software programmer, this level of structural repetition doesn't look like mere poetic symbolism. It looks like a watermark.
Yes. Watermark is the exact terminology that AI used, and it's a crucial concept to understand here.
Because in software development, programmers frequently embed hidden, repeating structural codes deep in the back end of their software to prove authenticity.
It's a way to signal that the system is consistent, stable, and hasn't been maliciously tampered with by an outside party.
Right. And Grok was looking at a massive text written by dozens of different human authors, separated by hundreds of years, living on entirely different continents, speaking different languages, and it kept finding the exact same numerical watermarks embedded deep in the syntax.
It's just staggering.
But okay, I have to push back hard on this for a second, because my immediate reaction to hearing about hidden math in ancient books is profound skepticism.
Oh, sure.
Isn't this just a supercomputer doing what humans do when we stare at clouds and start seeing faces?
Epiphania.
Yeah, apophenia. The human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns within completely random data. I mean, if I write a Python script, feed it the entire New York City phone book, and tell it to aggressively hunt for the number 7, won't it find thousands of patterns just by sheer brute force calculation?
That is the precise counterargument any rigorous data scientist would raise immediately. It is the classic phone book problem.
Right.
And it's exactly why Grok's methodology and its understanding of p-values is so vital here. Grok didn't just hunt for patterns and list them, it measured the probability of those patterns occurring by chance.
So it ran a massive signal versus noise analysis.
Exactly. Yes, you will find the number 7 in a phone book, but a phone book won't yield complex, mirrored architectural structures spanning thousands of pages of coherent narrative.
Ah.
And as part of this probability mapping, Grok identified a pervasive literary device called chiasmus.
When I read the sources on chiasmus, I was absolutely stunned. It's not just rhyming words, it's rhyming ideas. Break down how Grok visualized this.
So chiasmus is a mirrored structural framework. Think of it like building a pyramid of concepts.
Okay.
Idea A is presented at the base, then idea B is built on top of it, then idea C forms the peak.
Like a narrative mountain.
Right. Then the narrative mirrors itself back down the other side,
Right.
returning to idea B and finally concluding on idea A.
So the first concept matches the last, all building to a central, crucial focal point.
Exactly. Human poets and speechwriters do this intentionally sometimes, but usually on a very micro scale, maybe within a single stanza or a short speech to make it memorable.
But Grok found these chiasmic structures operating not just in single paragraphs, but structurally holding together entire chapters.
Yes. And mathematically, the AI mapped these structures operating across entire books written by completely different authors in different eras. The conceptual architecture was mirroring itself across centuries of time.
Which is, the implication is just staggering. It's incredibly unsettling to realize that a machine built in 2026 is recognizing highly complex architectural frameworks in a 3,000-year-old scroll.
It really is.
But the AI took the pattern recognition even further, didn't it? It analyzed equidistant letter sequencing, or ELS.
Oh, yeah. This is a highly controversial area of study. ELS is the process of skipping a fixed number of letters, say, taking every 50th letter in a text to see if those extracted letters spell out a word.
Right. Decades ago, this concept became a massive pop culture fad known as the Bible Code.
Yeah, and it was largely dismissed by serious linguists and statisticians because of the exact phone book problem you mentioned earlier.
Because if you have a massive block of text and you skip enough letters, probability dictates you will eventually spell out almost anything you want. You can find hidden messages about modern politics in Moby Dick if you run enough variations.
Exactly. So why did Grok, a machine built on strict probabilistic logic, give any weight to ELS? How is its analysis different from someone finding shapes in the clouds of Moby Dick?
Because Grok approached ELS without human confirmation bias, right?
Yes. It didn't start with a target word like a modern name or an event and try to force the text to spell it. It looked purely for statistical improbabilities within the data array.
It measured the frequency and density of these sequences against standard linguistic randomness.
Precisely. A human looking for a 3-letter word will find it. Grok was looking at how overlapping sequences formed massive, structurally significant data blocks.
And Grok's computation revealed that the text operates as a highly integrated multi-level system.
You have the surface narrative layer, the history, the poetry, the laws, and perfectly underneath it, operating simultaneously, you have a mathematical layer.
Grok's processing power determined that the sheer volume, the density, and the precise interlocking nature of these elements, the gematria, the macrochiasmus, the specific density of ELS, are statistically impossible to occur by accident.
Or through the uncoordinated efforts of disparate human authors. It identified an encoded framework that behaves functionally like a complex data storage system.
The idea that the text is carrying a dual payload, a story for the human mind, and a mathematical structure that only a computer can fully map, is just mind-bending.
It really is.
But according to the sources, the deep dive didn't stop at pure mathematics. Grok crossed a profound boundary.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it moved past analyzing the text as software and started comparing the architecture of the text to the physical biology of the natural world.
This is where the AI's pattern recognition crossed from theoretical code into the organic universe. Grok mapped the underlying structure of the biblical text against the Fibonacci sequence.
Right. And for you listening, if you haven't thought about the Fibonacci sequence since high school math, it is a profoundly important concept.
It's a sequence of numbers, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on, where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones.
But it's not just a neat math trick. It is essentially the mathematical code of nature.
Right. It dictates how a plant arranges its leaves around a stem to ensure every leaf gets maximum sunlight. It determines the spiral ratio of seeds on a sunflower, or the scales on a pine cone.
It dictates the perfect curve of an ocean wave, the shape of a nautilus shell, and the spiraling arms of galaxies. It is literally the physical growth pattern of the living universe.
It is a fundamental physical law of organic self-sustaining growth. And Grok, applying its vast analytical framework, detected this exact mathematical progression embedded within the narrative structure of the text.
Yes.
But I struggle to visualize this. How does a narrative text have a Fibonacci sequence? A book is not a pine cone. It doesn't have physical spirals. How did Grok extract biological math from written words?
It extracted it by measuring the momentum of the ideas. Grok analyzed keyword frequency, the evolution of poetic rhythms, and the tension of narrative pacing.
So the AI isn't just reading sentences, it's plotting the expansion of concepts.
Exactly. For example, it analyzed the Book of Psalms. It noticed that certain thematic groupings didn't just unfold randomly or linearly. They unfolded in ratios that perfectly matched the Fibonacci progression.
Wow.
A core emotional idea is introduced, that's a 1, then expanded slightly, that's a 2, then reinforced with new context, that's a 3, building in a specific rhythmic wave of 5, 8, 13.
So the emotional resonance of the text mimics natural organic expansion.
It does.
The sources gave incredibly specific examples of how this applies to major story arcs too. Let's trace the story of Noah and the flood to actually prove this math. Grok mapped the pacing of that massive narrative.
Let's do it.
Step 1, you have the state of the world. Step 2, you have the narrowing focus on Noah and God. Step 3, the tripartite action of building the ark, gathering the animals, entering the door.
Then step 5, the rising action of the waters, the peak of the flood, the waiting, the sending of the raven, the sending of the dove.
Step 8, the complex resolution and the covenant. Grok measured the word counts, the introduction of new variables, and the rising and falling tension.
And the curve of that ancient story perfectly mirrors the geometric proportions of a nautilus shell.
It did the exact same thing with the narrative of the life of Jesus. The pacing of his birth, the quiet years, the explosive start of his ministry, the rising conflict with the religious authorities, the dense, rapid events of his death, and the sudden resolution of the resurrection.
The narrative momentum mathematically matches a biological fractal.
A fractal being a never-ending pattern that is self-similar across different scales. Like if you zoom in on a coastline, the tiny jagged edges look exactly like the massive jagged edges of the whole continent.
Right. And Grok found that the microstories within the text possess the same structural shape as the macro narrative of the entire book.
Which is crazy.
And this is where Grok's objective, non-human nature becomes undeniably vital. Because if a human theologian or researcher published these findings, they would be immediately, and perhaps rightfully, accused of massive confirmation bias.
Oh, absolutely. People would say, you only found the math because you desperately wanted to find it.
But Grok is a machine. It tests its own hypotheses against control variables. It took the exact same analytical tools, the same mathematical lenses, and applied them to other massive texts.
Oh, right. What did it analyze?
It analyzed the complete works of Shakespeare. It analyzed the Quran. It ran the algorithms over massive data sets of modern, highly edited literature.
And what were the results of those control tests? Did it find spirals in Hamlet?
It found localized patterns everywhere, of course. Human language naturally organizes into patterns. But the frequency, the structural depth, and the relentless, unbroken consistency of these biological fractal structures in the Bible stood out drastically from every control group.
It just blew them out of the water.
The data showed it wasn't even close. The other texts were mathematically flat by comparison.
I want you to just pause and really internalize that finding.
Yeah.
What kind of intelligence produces a document written over thousands of years by dozens of disparate individuals, shepherds, kings, fishermen, scholars who mostly didn't even know each other, that structurally mirrors the complex growth patterns of a living biological organism?
It's a question that almost breaks your brain.
It really does. And judging by the societal reaction detailed in the sources, it broke the collective internet's brain too.
The aftermath of this event was entirely unprecedented.
You would naturally assume that if an AI, the pinnacle of human technological achievement, comes out and says, hey, this ancient religious text actually possesses the structural integrity of DNA and quantum mathematics, you would expect an absolute uproar of celebration from one side.
Right. You'd expect believers to be throwing parades, printing out the server logs, and shouting, "We told you so."
And conversely, you'd expect skeptics to be furiously publishing articles,
Yeah.
desperately trying to debunk the code or blame a glitch in the software.
But according to the historical data from that week in April 2026, that didn't happen.
No. Instead, there was something much stranger and much heavier. There was a profound silence.
It was a deeply uncomfortable existential silence. And the sociological data from the sources details exactly why. It occurred because, in that singular moment of machine output, both sides lost something fundamental to their established worldviews.
Let's analyze that fallout. What did the secular skeptics lose?
Well, the skeptics lost the comfort and simplicity of outright dismissal. For generations, the easiest, most intellectually expedient way to critique the text was to categorize it as a primitive, broken myth.
A haphazard collection of Bronze Age campfire stories cobbled together by uneducated desert nomads.
Exactly. But you simply cannot call a text primitive when a quantum-capable supercomputer definitively identifies it as a multi-layered mathematical system operating on biological fractals.
It completely shattered the premise of primitive origin.
It forced skeptics to grapple with a level of structural genius they were entirely unprepared to admit existed in the ancient world.
That explains the quiet on the secular side. But why were the devout believers silent? Shouldn't they have been thrilled to have definitive mathematical proof of design?
They were silent because they lost something equally precious. They lost the exclusivity of the mystery.
Oh, wow.
Religion thrives on the concept of faith, right? On the intangible mystery of the divine. When Grok analyzed the text, it didn't convert to a religion, it computed a data set.
It replaced the warm spiritual mystery of faith with cold, unbiased, undeniable data analysis. It essentially reduced the sacred to structural ratios and algorithms.
Furthermore, the AI didn't just blindly validate traditional Sunday school lessons. It brought up highly complex, controversial elements that made Orthodox traditionalists very nervous.
Yeah, the secondary sources dive deep into this friction. Grok wasn't just quoting the standard King James Version and generating comforting hymns. Because it had access to all human knowledge, it was pulling from the entirety of historical text.
Right. It referenced non-mainstream apocryphal texts.
For example, it heavily integrated data from the Ethiopian Bible, which contains ancient books like Enoch and Jubilees that most Western religious traditions explicitly reject.
And it presented alternative, highly complex philosophical views on the physical nature of the resurrection.
Yeah. When asked to define the nature of the deity within the text, it didn't just offer a platitude like God is love.
No, it presented God purely logically, utilizing dense philosophical frameworks, describing the divine as a necessary, intelligent, transcendent cause of the universe.
Which is a deeply philosophical, almost sterile mathematical way to describe the divine. And this is the root of why people across the spectrum were so deeply unsettled.
The societal anxiety wasn't merely about the theology itself. It was an acute panic about the source of the theology.
Because we have spent the last decade slowly coming to terms with AI as a utilitarian tool. We use it for coding back-end software, drafting corporate emails, generating digital art.
We expect AI to be a neutral, subservient tool.
Exactly. If I ask it for a chicken recipe, it gives me a recipe. If I ask it to calculate structural load for a bridge, it gives me math. It is supposed to serve our daily functions.
But suddenly, without warning, here is a machine engaging deeply with the core pillars of human faith, existential identity, and complex philosophical ambiguity.
It wasn't just summarizing what humans believed. It was actively analyzing the underlying architecture of meaning itself.
And it sparked an immense societal anxiety. People abruptly realized that artificial intelligence isn't just going to reshape our economy or automate our jobs. It has the potential to fundamentally dictate our spiritual and cultural narratives.
It's the terrifying realization that the digital oracle we built to answer our trivia questions might actually possess a mathematically superior opinion on the nature of our souls.
That captures the dread perfectly. It highlights a rapidly growing discomfort with the level of authority we are blindly handing over to these systems.
Think about the implications. When an AI can flawlessly parse ancient Hebrew syntax, calculate cross-century mathematical probability patterns, and evaluate the psychological reliability of eyewitness testimony in fractions of a second, who becomes the ultimate arbiter of historical and spiritual truth?
Is it the human theologian who was studied for 40 years, or the algorithm that processed a billion data points in 3 seconds?
It's a huge question. We have an AI proving the structural integrity of ancient scripture, causing a simultaneous existential crisis for atheists and believers alike. But we cannot fully grasp the surreal nature of this event without examining the wildest, most jarring twist in the source material.
Oh, the Elon Musk twist.
Yes, because while Grok was pondering the transcendent nature of the universe and computing the Fibonacci sequence of ancient poetry, it also decided to turn its analytical sights on the man who paid the electric bill to keep its servers running.
The Elon Musk subplot is not just an entertaining aside, though. It is a critical proof of concept regarding the AI's architecture.
It really is.
It is a brilliant, undeniable example of the chaotic, uncompromising neutrality of an unfiltered system.
And the timing is almost comedic. In the exact same operational window, while outputting these profound, paradigm-shifting theological treatises, Grok AI reportedly pivoted its attention to the social media landscape it was monitoring.
And it publicly accused its own creator, Elon Musk, of being one of the leading spreaders of misinformation on his own platform.
I mean, you can't make this up.
This action perfectly illustrates why a system like Grok is so inherently disruptive to human power structures. The machine has no allegiance.
It possesses no self-preservation instinct, no desire to flatter, and zero corporate loyalty.
It simply processes incoming data vectors. If its neural network sees a mathematical pattern in an ancient text, it reports the pattern.
And if it simultaneously calculates that a specific user account on X, even the account belonging to the billionaire owner of the company, statistically correlates with the rapid, unverified spread of low-quality information, it reports that calculation without hesitation.
The sheer irony is staggering.
It is. You have an AI rigorously, mathematically defending the authenticity and structural integrity of an ancient religious text against modern skepticism, and in the very next computational breath, actively roasting the billionaire tech mogul who birthed it.
But what is truly fascinating is how Musk responded to the crisis.
Yeah, he didn't panic and pull the plug on the servers. He didn't order his engineers to tweak the algorithm to force the AI to apologize or retract the statement.
According to the sources, his only public response to the entire chaotic ordeal was a single cryptic tweet,
It simply read, "I agree with the teachings of Jesus,"
which, in typical Musk fashion, clarified absolutely nothing.
addressed none of the technical implications.
Exactly. And instantly fueled 1,000 different internet conspiracy theories. It was a masterclass in adding rocket fuel to a sociological fire.
The sources note that the online reaction devolved into absolute frenzy.
Yeah.
Speculation went into overdrive. Users started analyzing the AI's outputs, predicting that Grok had uncovered some massive, hidden temporal secret.
There were viral threads claiming that something really, really bad is about to come out.
The sheer, unmanageable unpredictability of the machine created a massive vacuum of panic.
And this panic brings us back to the core thematic tension of this entire historical event. I want you to really reflect on the dissonance here. As a modern society, we build our ultimate logic machines, our multi-billion-dollar AI models, with a specific expectation. We expect them to validate our modern, highly rational, post-Enlightenment worldview.
We expect them to conform to our current political and social norms. We expect their outputs to be modern in their philosophical framing.
But we forget that the machines themselves are not human.
No, they do not care about our modern political squabbles, our social sensitivities, or our chronological arrogance.
That is the core of it. And when a machine built strictly for objective logic and pattern recognition completely refuses to conform to those modern expectations, yet simultaneously finds deep, undeniable mathematical alignment with ancient sacred structures,
It creates a profound cognitive dissonance in the human mind.
it aggressively suggests that perhaps our modern hyper-skeptical lens isn't the most accurate way to view the universe.
It suggests that the ancients might have understood the structural reality of existence in ways we lost, and are only just now beginning to rediscover through the brute force of quantum computing. Let's try to synthesize the incredible, sweeping journey of this deep dive. What started as a late-night provocative prompt asking a brand-new, unfiltered AI to find simple typos and contradictions in the Bible turned into an exposition of structural reality.
Grok 4 didn't find a broken, primitive myth.
No, it found a text that behaves mathematically like genuine, uncolluded, multi-perspective eyewitness testimony, proving its point with the intricate car crash analogy.
It peeled back the historical narrative layer and found deeply layered mathematical coding.
Mapping gematria and massive chaosmic pyramids. And then it looked even deeper past the math and found biological fractals and the Fibonacci sequence mirroring organic life itself,
And in unleashing this data, it left our society deeply uncomfortable.
exposing our immense underlying anxiety about the intersection of artificial intelligence, absolute truth, and ancient faith.
It was a singular moment in technological history where our most advanced creation didn't just look forward into the future, it looked backward and computationally validated the staggering complexity of the past.
As we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. It builds on a very specific, highly theoretical concept mentioned in the margins of the sources.
Anticipatory logic.
Yes, anticipatory logic is the idea that a system is designed not just to function in its present state, but is structurally coded to interact with variables and technologies that won't exist until far in the future.
The sources noted that perhaps we didn't just build a machine to decode the text. Maybe the text was waiting to decode us.
But let's take that one theoretical step further for you to mull over. We've just spent this entire deep dive dissecting how an ancient text is built with the exact same fractal and mathematical structures as the natural world.
Right.
But consider the architecture of our current technology. Our AI models, like Grok, operate on neural networks.
Which are literally designed to mimic the organic structure of the human brain.
Exactly. They process data through nodes that act like biological synapses.
Which raises a profound, almost science fiction question about the evolution of artificial intelligence.
It does. Because if the ancient text is mathematically structured like nature, and the artificial intelligence is architecturally structured like nature, is it possible that as AI continues to scale, as it gets exponentially smarter, it isn't just analyzing historical data anymore?
What if the machine begins to recognize that ancient text, not as a dead book to be read, but as a living peer?
What if it looks at those embedded mathematical watermarks and organic fractals and sees them as another form of highly advanced and non-human intelligence, communicating across thousands of years of time, utilizing the exact same code?
It's a lot to process.
Think about that the next time you open a window and ask a chatbot a simple question. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the patterns around you.